Okay, welcome to Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a couple of half-crazed, half-gays who dig into the queer and feminist themes of this seminal genre television show. My name is Joel, and your name is?
Brian. How's it going? How you doing?
Not too bad. And what are we going to be watching, reviewing, listening to this week?
That's Reptile Boy.
Reptile Boy,
yeah, which is actually my least favourite Teen Titan, but there you go.
That was, I was trying to come up with, before we start recording, if we did a different podcast called Reptile Boy, what would that podcast be about? But there's no great snake TV shows.
No, there really isn't.
Underrepresented.
It could be our Metal Gear Solid podcast.
Ooh. Snake?
Snake, yeah.
Snake!
Reptile Boy, is this the first time that the title of the episode has been used in the episode?
Oh, that's a good question. Does anyone say welcome to the Hellmouth?
No.
No. I have to go back and think about that.
Oh, actually, the Harvest. They definitely say the Harvest in the Harvest.
Inca Mummy Girl?
I don't think they do say Inca Mummy Girl. It's a pretty unusual one. I don't think they use the title of the episode too often in the episodes themselves.
One thing they definitely do is lie to me.
They do, which is coming up actually quite soon.
So who wrote and who directed this episode?
Sure. So this episode was written and directed by David Greenwalt, who we had a couple of times. He's the Angel guy, and it was first shown on October the 13th, 1997. And this is episode 5 of season 2. Did you already say that?
No, I didn't actually. October the 13th.
Oh, yeah, it haunted. Wow.
Well, also because this episode takes place on the 10th of October.
It does take place on the 10th of October.
The 10th day of the 10th month is when the ritual takes place.
Weird.
Yeah.
Weird. That's quite, lined up. So we went to see Pet Sematary, which we discussed a couple of weeks ago in our podcast. It feels like it's been a long time because you were away last weekend in Germany. So we weren't able to record last weekend. So we had to, the weekend before that we recorded
We doubled up a couple of episodes.
Yeah, and next week I'm going to be in Germany, so we're going to have to record on a weekend as well, which is annoying. But we went to see Pet Sematary in the meantime.
Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't good.
It was only okay. It was a fun cinema experience. And sometimes it's nice to go to a film not because the film is good, but because you're in a place with people.
That's true. This wasn't the case then. We got to the cinema and there were people sitting in our seats.
Oh, that was gross. Yeah.
I don't suffer that. As in, I'm a deeply unconfrontational person who does not like talking to people in the world. And I had to go up to them and say, "Hey, listen, sorry, you're in our seats." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, well, there are people sitting in our seats." So, and I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to get you to move because I don't want to have a situation where someone comes up to me at some point and says, you're sitting in my seat now." And they moved, and they got moved around by
Multiple
different people.
times, yeah.
Being like, "Oh, you're sitting in our seats now."
Obviously.
And eventually they just had to go to the people who had taken up their seats originally and be like, "Oh, hey, could you move?" And of course those people moved instantly. But then it was an incredibly loud cinema. Everyone was so noisy, and a guy sitting behind us, 30 seconds into the movie, when everyone was just settling in with their popcorn and stuff, shushed people.
He did very aggressively. But see, sometimes I think when people shush people like that, I'm like, I would never do that, but I'm glad someone else did, and I think it has to be me. And I think, see, you said there you don't suffer fools. Usually that expression is you don't suffer fools gladly. With you, it's very much you don't suffer a fool to live. You have no time for that kind of bullshit.
Someone said that to me recently, was that Brian, you don't put up with people. And I'm like, yeah, if you're someone who I like, I will do anything for you. But if you're someone who I don't know or don't like, there's no chance I'm going to be nice or...
Too many fools in the world to be putting up with them.
Yeah. So, yeah, Pet Sematary, not good. I don't think that plot is salvageable by this point.
I don't know.
Not enough happens.
So it was a bad adaptation because in some ways they tried to do a modern version of it. In some ways there was some very, very specific things which only worked if you've seen the original. Because some degree, they were trying to
ape shots from it and everything.
Fake out people have seen the original. But also it got to that point, which is always, I think, a real killing blow for a horror film where it got a bit goofy, where you weren't afraid of the things anymore. It was oh, what weird thing are they going to do next? And then it just becomes almost like a sitcom with a lot of gore.
Yeah, and I mean, you need your crescendo to be towards the very end. The only time I felt safe watching Hereditary, the first time I watched in the cinema, which was a terrifying experience and brilliant. But the first moment I felt safe in that movie was basically when you know that oh, this is just gone now. It's in the last 2 minutes. Yeah. And it's the reprieve. And it just it controls your emotions the whole way through. Whereas this definitely did let up on the tension and let up on the control of the audience. Maybe 3/4 of the way in, essentially.
It just didn't know what it wanted to do. And it just excised and then re-sticked parts of the original King plot in ways that just didn't track. It was just it was really odd film.
Actually, in the last episode of Buffy Boys, I think I said Stanley Kubrick adaptations instead of Stephen King adaptations at a point, which is weird, but it actually worked in the end in the phrasing, which was odd. But yeah, no, wouldn't recommend Pet Sematary. Would probably give it a 4.8 out of 10, to be honest.
4.8 dead pets out of 10.
4.8 sticky cats out of 10.
Ugh, gross.
It was a really sticky cat. So yeah, you're in Germany.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to you about this the other day, but one of my cousins, she's huge into she's big into Avatar and Korra and She-Ra and Dragon Prince and all that good baby's first serious fantasy science fiction stuff. She loves young adult fiction and all this stuff. And I can't decide when a good time to introduce her to Buffy is.
Yeah.
She's 12 now.
Yeah, she's not 12.
She is, I think.
Is she?
She might be 13.
Yeah, it's an odd one.
Because I was watching it when I was 12.
Yes, but when you started watching things, it's not a good metric because look how you turned out.
True.
Yeah, it's an odd one because a lot of it is very young adult themes. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's necessarily a lot of the earlier seasons of Buffy that I find particularly horrific in terms of showing to younger persons. But that being said, I was scarred watching Brendan Fraser's Mummy when I was 14 and a half, so it obviously goes to depend on the individual. And I think, this is such an old person thing to say, but I think kids are exposed to probably much more graphic content these days by virtue of the fact that just the quality of the visuals and the media. If you have, the chances are that there's probably kids who are watching Game of Thrones and things like that because that's just what people are watching.
Yeah, my mom, who's a special needs assistant in a school, she, there's a kid in school who has watched all of Game of Thrones and he couldn't wait for it to come back last week. And he was watching it with he watches it with his dad whenever it comes out.
And these kids are how old?
So they're all primary school.
Yeah.
So they're all 12 and younger.
Yeah.
And this kid would have been 9 or 10.
Yeah, and there's definitely a question about, obviously there will always be kids who watch things that are, quote unquote inappropriate.
Yeah.
But I just feel like that it's probably more common to watch more advanced stuff now than maybe we wouldn't have had the same access to it when we were growing up.
Yeah, it's possible.
But that being said, anything that we watch so far, I don't know if there's anything I would feel is going to be aging appropriate necessarily, but I don't know. I don't feel like I'm a great judge of that. So
yeah.
It's always difficult to, when you want to expose younger people to good content like this, and I would do that a lot.
There's also a balance of when will they appreciate it most?
Yeah, because there's always that thing where you watch particularly genre things when you're younger, and then if you rewatch them when you're older, even stuff like The Simpsons.
Yeah,
you watch The Simpsons now, a lot of that went over my head at the time.
Yeah.
But I know particularly something that I was chatting to you about in terms of when I was in Germany, and in terms of I always try to, when I see my sister who lives in Germany with my family, that I would bring movies or TV shows or things like that I think are really formative or really useful, because I think I'm particularly good taster in this kind of thing. Things like Avatar or Kubo and the Two Strings, and
you used to bring her a lot of Ghibli movies. Exactly.
Things that once you get a taste for it, you can follow that vein, but you need to know that they exist in a way. And
absolutely.
So I'm at the point now where my sister isn't too much younger than your cousin, and I have to start thinking about what's that transitional point. In terms of Buffy, was really interesting because I kind of did a bit of research on just what exists for Buffy X the TV show in terms of the expanded media, and the fact that people are still producing today Buffy merchandise is kind of wild since it's been off television for so long. Yeah. But a couple of things that I found existed and were actually produced just last year, which I picked up and actually have with me today in the studio. I'm going to lean over and have a look at them.
Please.
So just a couple of odd things in terms of exactly this kind of young adult version of Buffy. So there's a book I have here, and I'll tweet some pictures of this when we put this episode out just for context. But it's a reimagined version of Buffy in a young adult context. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, New School Nightmare, and it's very much like actually only I don't want to say Captain Underpants, but maybe a little bit more advanced than that. But if I open up for you, Brian, you see it's all done in the style of basically
SMSs and
Buffy, the MSN Messenger, Buffy's journal, like a Polaroid of her and the Scoobies, and they're all 12 and 13. Yeah. And it's like My Little Vampire. That's a film, isn't it?
Littlest Vampire. Or no, what was it called? It was Mona the Vampire, maybe.
Yeah. So actually, I'm actually just going to read out a bit of one of the diary entries here, right?
Please.
So, dear diary, I can hardly believe the holidays are almost over. Sag face. They wrote sag face. For Christmas, I got my Razor scooter and a bunch of sweaters, and my dad sent me a tiny piano. I can't wait. The Scooby Gang has wheels. Vamps don't stand a chance. You know, so it's that kind of thing where you don't feel like that this version of Buffy is ever going to find her mother's dead body on the couch. And some of the other things I have is an even younger picture book where it's, you know, but the weird thing about it is it's very much Buffy and the Scoobies go exploring the house fighting vampires, and they're portrayed as, you know, 6, 7 kind of years old,
sort of, yeah.
But the actual imagery that they use in it is from the entirety of the show. So you have the gentleman, you have Clem, Olaf, you have Sweet, who's a vampire from the musical episode. So it does.
There's the what's his name, the puppet, Sid,
the Hoffring, the judge. You know, So it really is like, to really appreciate it, you need to have seen the show, but it's clearly indicated to give to kids, to give them the concept of what a vampire slayer is, you know, or what this mythos is. And all this only came out last year. I feel like I'm on the toy show.
I was going to say you're like
very toy show right now.
It's very toy show. Late Toy Show is a distinctly Irish thing that basically every year around Christmas, everyone in Ireland tunes in to watch a late night show where the host has loads of kids on to review loads of toys, and the kids always say the darndest things and become instant memes. Yeah. And everyone, there was a kid who liked clocks a couple of years ago, and he became like a national sensation.
So horologist?
Yeah.
And just the last thing I mentioned briefly is a novel, an actually written kind of novel that isn't like part of the Buffy story, but it's kind of post-Buffy. And it's specifically set after the end of the comics.
Oh, cool.
In some ways. But it's about a girl who is the last Slayer by virtue of the fact that she was the last Slayer called before Buffy ended magic, essentially, which is something that happens in the comics. And it ties together, but she's ties together all that stuff. But she's born into a Watcher family, so she's in training to be a Watcher in 2015 or whatever, and it's the last Slayer called. And it's a young adult novel. It's called Slayer. And it's actually set in Ireland, I think, or parts of Ireland. Yeah, like that's where they're set up, is like in some castle off the Aran Islands or something like that. And all of her friends in it, it's almost like a Hunger Games kind of vibe to it. But all of her friends are the sons and daughters of Watchers that we see at various points during Buffy.
Oh, cool.
And as much as anything is canon, like this is like the continuation of that story. Like, so it's, I don't know where these things came from or who commissioned them. You know, but they're out there and people are doing them. Yeah,
that's great.
So I think this might actually be the kind of thing where having these kind of ancillary materials or things where if you can find, if you want to start introducing people to this kind of content, you can give this, like, you have a grounding in it. You know, and even with stuff like obviously Doctor Who, Star Trek, all that kind of stuff isn't nearly as like controversial in some ways, but they all have YA things you can give people. So I think you need to start building up. And yeah, that's my idea. That's
cool. Well, the last note I'll say about the last episode was that we talked about Eskimo and Inuit as terms, and I was saying that Inuit was maybe like could be inappropriate in situations because Inuit is a specific kind of tribe of
indigenous peoples,
and there are people who definitely do still prefer the term Eskimo, but a lot of people find it quite derogatory, so it's a much more complex situation than I portrayed, and just something to bear in mind.
Well, I think it's definitely one of these things with a lot of these a lot of minority communities anyway, is that it's always evolving, and ultimately you just need to take the lead from the people who are in the situation, but it gives an opportunity to learn anyway. I think you always have to be careful about, you should never wait to say something until you know the exact perfect thing to say, because it doesn't exist.
No, I would agree with that.
Wade into it a bit. Yeah.
Okay, Reptile Boy.
What happened in the episode? Who was the reptile? Who was the boy? What does the boy represent?
Okay, here's our Buffy summary. Cordelia persuades Buffy to join her at an exclusive fraternity house party. Actually, the rich boys regularly sacrifice young girls to a reptilian demon for wealth and power.
Pivot.
The killing of the demon by Buffy results in various alumni going bankrupt and to jail. None of that was inaccurate.
That's to the point. They completely leave out the angel side of things, though.
True, and they ignore the fact that party itself had any substance to it whatsoever.
Yeah, they kind of skip to the payoff. So basically this is the episode where Cordelia by association Buffy get invited to a fraternity party as high school girls, and there's a lot of plague straight issues around them being teens and drinking alcohol and getting spiked and date rape situations and all that. And obviously the Buffy twist in it is that they're also doing this to sacrifice them to a snake god from which they get all their white frat boy success, Yep. But then the other side of it is Buffy is doing this in rebellion against a couple of things. One is Giles putting too much pressure on her as the Slayer, and the other is Angel being kind of hot and cold in terms of their relationship. So and it's kind of about developing, the denouement is them kind of like actually starting to date exclusively boy-girl, going steady kind of thing,
Yeah, which is funny because didn't they kind of resolve that in episode 2 or 3 of the season? Didn't they kind of say, yeah, we'll date essentially? I when I got to this point in this episode, when Angel was saying, oh, I'm not sure if we should do this, and Buffy was saying, oh, don't read me the warning label and stuff. It was quite confusing to me because I was like, oh, I thought they already settled this.
Yeah, I think it's all. I think they do. I thought their portrayal of the Angel Buffy stuff, I think they're trying to give us some substance to the relationship so that it has some poignancy when it goes wrong. But there was a bit of back and forth in terms of Angel kind of grabbing her and being like, I'm so spooky, and her like, every time I kiss you I want to die. And
I have a lot to say about that, but go on.
Yeah, I know we gloss over this, but sometimes I'm like, why, if Angel is 241 years old, why is he so goddamn immature when he interacts with Buffy? Like, she is 16 years old.
It's not good.
He's quite, I know it's funny, I know it's cute at times, but he's quite like petty.
Yeah.
And he reacts, it's a classic case of Arrested Development, this whole vampire thing, because he reacts so hurt to her storming off on him, where like surely hundreds of people stormed off on him in the last 2 centuries. Do you know what I mean? It's not one. I also, something I realized at the end of the episode, and I wrote it down because I wanted to remember it for now, was that I realized, that thing Angel does where you turn around and he just disappears?
Yeah.
He has had 241 years to master the Irish goodbye.
Oh, he has. That's beautiful. Good job.
So I was happy with that, because at the end of this episode, he's just left in the bronze with Willow and Xander. Like, are they just going to hang out now? It's like, no, they're clearly going to turn around to get a muffin and he'll be gone.
Yeah, no doubt. So, sex and death, is that what you're trying to talk about?
Yes, please.
Sex and death. Obviously, sex and death historically are deeply connected. Sex is the progenitor of death. Sex leads to death in more ways than one. So obviously in this show, sex leads to death in the sense that sex is what causes Angel to lose his soul. When Buffy says in this episode, kissing you makes me want to die, one of the things I read in a couple of different instances around this is that would potentially refer to like Le Petit Mort, which is the kind of I always think it's very connected to John Keats, Le Petit Mort, because there's a poem where he says to die eternally or something like that. Anyway, he's talking about wanting to die when he has sex.
Yeah, Le Petit Mort essentially.
Le Petit Mort is the orgasm. The little death. It's a Shakespearean idea of sex and death being connected. So that's a definite consistent theme in this season actively, but very specifically in this episode, that her responding to Angel saying, "When you kiss me, I want to die." There's no interpretation of that that's straight. I don't think Buffy the character says that. That was so thematic in its nature. I don't think there's a value to that statement.
There's no organic way to say that in a conversation.
Exactly. It was a really unusual one. Also, Buffy apparently had sex dreams about Angel, which is, also interesting.
Yeah, which she said to Willow, which I really kind of tried to gloss over. And you know what I was thinking, because we've seen this when we're watching the reboot of I suppose you can call it a reboot of Sabrina recently. And Sabrina also getting to this kind of 16-year-old kind of I'm thinking about alcohol and having sex and all this kind of stuff, which is like a weird thing they interplay when they so clearly display witch culture as being about orgies.
Yeah.
You always portray your protagonist as even when you're being progressive, it's like they're open to it, but they want to really think about it. And it's like, you never have people on TV who aren't tearaways, but who are just getting drunk and having sex like the way that people do. There's not a great balance for that in the way they portray teenagers. And I think Buffy
I think it's partially because you find that hard to write for your production company. Your production company and your distribution people are going to be no, we're not distributing something that says that kids should be going out and having sex, getting drunk, especially in America. Remember when Skins got remade in America? Skins is a British TV show from Channel 4 that was genuinely raucous in its portrayal of sex and drugs and alcohol amongst teenagers.
And I think most importantly, okay, what Skins did was make all of us of a particular age generation feel like, wow, we have no friends and are doing nothing fun. I think I've actually heard a few people say that.
That was my experience. It made me feel very lonely.
Me too.
But Skins, when it was released in America, they released one season in America. It was like lambasted by the conservative right for being way too liberal in terms of its portrayal of sex amongst teenagers. But it was an incredibly tame show. It was incredibly watered down from the original British show. So it's a really unusual one.
But the fact that you have Cordelia being the most extreme by comparative, but Cordelia, Xander, Willow, and Buffy all portraying that they've never even considered having a martini before in terms of alcohol. I think it's unrealistic, and like you have Buffy as the narrative just kind of venerate her as kind of for having this restraint, which I think isn't. That's not how I write it today. I actually don't think when they write Buffy today, they would write it with that kind of
moralizing,
slightly puritanical approach to things. But anyway, it was interesting. And when you talk about sex and death, particularly in terms of the genre, like you have to talk about how so often if you play it straight in a slasher film or a horror film, if you have sex, two things will happen. You will birth the devil's baby, or you'll be killed by Jason Voorhees with a big cleaver. So there's
no doubt.
part of that in this as well, I think.
I totally agree. It's having moral repercussions to your enjoyment as a teenager. Doing normal teenager things is a definite trope in science, in horror. So
I think it's important to clarify that basically the cause and effect in this episode is they're bringing the girls to this party, and I think we get the impression as well that they have to be somewhat virginal or untouched.
Okay.
The reason why they never make that completely textual, but they do very specifically spike Cordelia and Buffy's drinks. And they go and pass out in a bedroom, and the gross fraternity guy comes in. And it's a scene we've unfortunately seen 1,000 times on television, which is about them about to be sexually assaulted, essentially. And the guy who was playing the nice guy trope, who Buffy thinks is nice, Tom, the twist is he comes in and throws a guy off her, and it's like, get away from her, you pervert. And then he's like, you're not meant to touch them. We're keeping them for the pleasure of the demon we serve. So there is a sense there I felt of the penis demon. Like it's a big old snake.
It's a big penis.
It's a big old penis that comes out of the ground, gives them all wealth. They have their male only ceremonies around, and then have brewskis together. It's a whole thing. And the writer of this episode, I think, has specifically said, oh yeah, that was just like a really thinly veiled metaphor.
It's super phallic.
But yeah, and like every scene I see like this on television, no matter how often I see it, it's undiluted. I'm deeply uncomfortable. Watching this when Buffy is, just like not in control of herself and vulnerable and being taken advantage of, it's highly gross, and it grosses me out.
Gross.
It's not bad writing.
Is it not bad writing? Well, this episode is bad writing, probably, I would say. Is it bad writing to have her like this, like this girl with so much agency and so much strength and so much, I'd like to show her in such a vulnerable state after essentially judging her for having made the mistake of having imbibed?
I don't think it's bad writing in this case, and I'll tell you why. I'm not saying the episode overall is well written, but I'm saying in terms of a choice, Buffy suffers from a Superman problem where you have to contrive situations where she's genuinely vulnerable, which to allow her, because if she's too invulnerable, or if her Slayer strength stops her from getting in these situations, if she's immune to the poison because she's a Slayer or whatever, you can't see her next to other unpowered girls where she can represent her agency. She needs to be in the vulnerable situations that women are in for her to act as a woman in those situations. So it's a difficult one to navigate, but she has to be drugged and chained up for her to break out of those chains. Do you know what I'm trying to say there?
I do. And what I thought was actually a good move in this episode is that she isn't saved in the end. She saves herself. The guys arrive, Giles, Xander and Angel arrive in the end, and Willow arrive in the end, but they don't help her. She's already broken free, and she slashes the guy's head off.
Yeah, it's a really consistent thing that happens. Like, and often, they contribute because they cause a distraction,
and they bring the sword.
They bring the sword and all that. But often they arrive and they actually get in trouble. Where it's like, Buffy, we're here to save you, and then a second later, it's like, Buffy, help!
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but you actually, and it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but you actually very rarely see anyone say cut her bonds or free her. Like, she actually tore her chains out of the roof and strangled the guy who, and it's not the subtlest metaphor in the world, but he was portrayed as like a nice guy who actually really understood her, and then he was, you know, slapped her and he was like, bitch, and go cut your throat and all this kind of stuff, and she tore her chains out of the wall and strangled him into unconsciousness, you know. So it was strong, you know.
Yeah, no, I can hear that, on that for sure. But no, the date rape scene, genuinely disturbing and upsetting. And
it reminded me, just for obvious parallels, again, had a bit of a Veronica Mars vibe to it.
Sure.
This whole rich guy party, fraternities, the class thing, you know, trying to punt above your social standing, all that kind of stuff. I feel when we finish Buffy Boys, I can feel a Veronica Mars thing coming on, because I can feel there's a clear through line through it, you know?
No doubt. I mean, the best thing about Veronica Mars is how extensively, like, they're the most similar thing with Buffy is that they're both so easy to overlook. You know, a teenage detective, that sounds great, and then you watch the first episode and it's like, oh, I'm trying to find out who raped me. Yeah, and it's so hard hitting.
It's unflinching.
It is unflinching. Yeah. It's one of the best female roles in television history, I would say. These two actually.
There's parallels there because they both go to college and there's similar themes there. And I think there's a lot of crossover, and they both continue to be women while doing things in spaces that are usually denied to women.
Yep, agreed.
So it's interesting. What was your favorite thing about this episode?
Oh, geez.
My favorite thing about this episode.
Thank God.
Yeah,
go on.
I was teeing that up. Giles.
Yeah.
Giles is just comic powerhouse in this episode. I usually give that MVP to Cordelia.
Yeah.
But he was portrayed, because the whole thing is that it's gone quiet in Sunnydale for a couple of weeks. So he almost has nothing to do, and he's kind of getting cabin fever. So he's insisting that they train. But he is like coming out dressed like a dog handler, stepping into the room, being like, I'm going to attack you. And, you know, Queensbury rules, be warned, I will not pull my punches, and then just getting his ass handed to him by Buffy. And something which really just made my heart flugger was when he was alone, he looked around, I like took the story out, and he's like, back fell vampire, watch out, and then like doing his like,
what if they stab you from behind?
Yeah, like we've all done with a lightsaber at some point, and most of us normies have played with a lightsaber and pretended to like fight demons, whatever, and then like trying to hide his sword when they come in. It was just very cute.
Yeah, it was cute. I also liked his moment at the end where he says, yeah, I'm pushing you too hard, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's a great parent. He's a great parent in that respect. He's a great role model, because she says, oh, I had one drink, I went to one party, and basically I did the bad thing. And he's, instead of like, you know, chastising her, he just says, well, you had one drink and a snake nearly ate you, so I feel like that's hammering the point home would be wasted now. And he says, you know, I've made a mistake here as well, so I won't push you, but I will continue to nudge you in the right direction. And it's just exquisite parenting, you know. It's
affectionate and lovely. Cordelia in this episode, actually, though, when you mention her, she really does work as the shadow self for Buffy here. She both criticizes Buffy extensively in a really backhanded way throughout the episode, which is really funny, to be honest. Yeah. There are points where she's like, don't do that thing with your hair. And Buffy's like, what thing? She's like, don't interrupt me. Yeah.
And then she comes back to it. She's like, we can be like sisters with really different hair.
Yeah. Lots of great Cordelia moments in this episode, not least of which is her driving abilities continue to falter. She parks at one point and she's like, she drives into a parking space at speed and then gets there and she's like, why do they always park so close to you? Which is great. And her license plate is Queen C, which is just beautiful.
Yeah.
But Cordelia very actively plays the shadow self to Buffy in this episode. She criticizes Buffy and she is her temptress. She's saying, this is the person you could be out having a normal girl life, living around here, partying with the college boys, drinking and wearing beautiful clothes and having your hair done in a nice way. And she really does represent the temptation for Buffy to ditch her Slayer ness and to move on towards that and to be the fun young girl.
Yeah, and she very much says, you know, portrays this party in this life, and you know, she says this is our gateway to prosperity, and this is how we, you know, Buffy's job is to help her get into this world, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking, actually, because they talk a lot in this episode about college for obvious reasons, and I can't remember what happens to Cordelia. Obviously, I know she ends up being Angel, but you were saying to me that her family got bankrupt.
Yeah. She can't go to college because her family goes bankrupt. Her father's been like embezzling funds for years. And remember, there's an episode where in season 3 where her and Xander have broken up, and she wants to go to the prom, but she can't afford the nice. She runs into Xander. Xander's like, "What are you doing here, Cordelia?" And she's like, "I'm looking at the dress I'm going to buy from prom." And he's like, "Okay, sorry, Cordelia, fuck you." And it turns out she's actually working there, trying to buy the dress herself, and he buys it for her, I think, in the end.
Yeah, I actually forgotten about that. And like, it's one.
And she does go. That's why she doesn't go to college. Is she doesn't have the money.
It's one of the reasons why when she goes get on Angel, like she grows because she has to live in an apartment by herself for the first time. All this kind of stuff. It's actually she's a fascinating character.
She's done so dirty in Angel though.
Yeah. Well, so are a lot of people. Let's be honest. We're not going to do an Angel podcast.
No, I don't think so.
Angel
allies is what I always think in my brain.
Well, even that doesn't sound good. I don't like it. And I love
Angel and anemones.
Anemones. I can't do it. Something I really find very hokey and endearing about these Buffy episodes is like they want to tie up certain horrible things from the real world in like a satisfying way. So they obviously can't kill the frat boys. Yeah. So at the end, it's just like Xander's just reading like the Sunnydale Express. And he's like,
it's not Sunnydale Express. It is the it's the Sunnydale Press, not Express. Okay. Yeah.
In the Bronze again. This is one stop, social space,
and so which they discussed previously in the episode. Them bringing tea bags.
Bring your own tea bags. Like ask for hot water. But
I mean, are you having tea in the Bronze? Why not get a beer, you dorks?
Yeah. But he reads that all of the frat boys got arrested, got consecutive life sentences. We're presuming this has happened within a couple of days, at most of the end of the episode, and that all of their CEOs of the various companies, because it's implied that their fathers and grandfathers, all sacrificed to this demon, they've all lost all their money from their companies and killed themselves in the boardroom. So it's like in the space of it, and this is apparently all been investigative journalism from the Sunnydale Press, in a short period of time. But we're like, okay, well, bad things happen to the white boys. That's fine. Yeah, we can kind of resolve this now emotionally.
Do we think that the penis demon and the frat boys, do they have a symbolic point here apart from being just the most disgusting elements of patriarchy? Yeah,
like I don't want to hark on my hobby horse here, but I think this is another tick in the bingo card for Buffy of like what other manifestation of the patriarchy can we kind of have on an episode to some degree. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's contrived. I think it's just that as women exist in the world, they constantly run into different versions of the same fucking monster. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But no, I think it's just an interesting situation to put them into. I think it's interesting to put both Buffy, but all the cast really, but particularly Buffy and Cordelia at a disadvantage.
Yeah, sure.
Which is something they do again. I think is Slayer Fest '98.
Yeah, sure. It's one of the 3 very distinct instances of Buffy and Cordelia specifically both being attacked in unison. So the first one obviously being out of mind, out of sight.
Yeah.
Then this one, and then the third one is
Slayer
Fest.
All 3 of them, interestingly,
which is Homecoming.
Interestingly, all 3 of them are like none of them are when they're out, doing community service. Like all 3 of them are when Cordy and Buffy are doing that shadow self thing where they're both in dresses essentially for different reasons.
Cordelia really does represent Buffy at her most feminine and most tempted towards the Valley Girl easy lifestyle. Did you read this thing about the CGI and the boys at the end of the episode?
No, but I love hearing about CGI. Tell me.
Okay, it's not great. So the CGI in this episode, not great at all. It wasn't as bad as I remember, though, to be honest.
Because I always remember this episode with the weird penis demon as being particularly bad, and it actually wasn't.
It wasn't quite as bad as I thought. Yeah, but apparently they had ran into massive difficulties with the CGI. They couldn't afford to do enough of it to get their whole story across. So they had originally planned for Tom to be eaten at the end by the reptile.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but they couldn't afford it, so they just had him out.
Had him arrested.
Yeah, and they also intended for what was his name?
Machida.
Yeah, Machida. They had intended for him to be a recurring bad guy, but
really?
they couldn't bring him back CGI wise.
Yeah, it was very much like the upper half was just a guy in a reptile suit, and then it was like question mark, and then the rest of his body. And I mentioned just briefly he was. I was surprised he didn't speak at any point, to be honest. But he's played by Robert Atkin Downes, who is a regular genre player. He voices Ethan Rayne in all the Buffy games.
Really?
Yeah, and he's the kind of person who you would not know his face, but his name is attached to every video game you've ever seen. I think a lot of the BioWare games, he's a regular person there, and he's also a regular player in season 5 of Babylon 5.
Nice.
So it was all because I didn't know he was there, but he just has a nothing role in it.
Yeah, sure.
But one thing I did read was that they have a bit at the start of the episode where they're watching Indian television and Bollywood films and trying to figure out what's happening. And
which is very Friends.
Very Friends, definitely very Friends. There's a bit of a thematic thing there where very specifically in Indian mythology you have the Nagi demons, which are snake demons who come up out of the earth, and that this is potentially very thematically linked to the actual monster of the episode.
Is that the origin of Nagini?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling doesn't go very deep for these things. No. That's 100% where the snake comes from in Harry Potter.
Yeah, I actually found that a whole scene in the beginning of the episode where the Scoops are watching a Bollywood movie and voicing over it and trying to guess what's actually happening and talking about chiropractors. I thought that was very distinctly supposed to represent kind of a more wholesome way of spending a night with your friends than potentially the girl who goes to the frat house. I thought it was a little bit of an odd comparison to draw between the two things to be doing, because immediately after showing them all hanging around and watching this movie, they show the girl running away from the frat house, which is odd. Cassie Anderson, who has the same name as the...
Yeah, they make a big point about one of the rich guys being Anderson, like, say, Richard Anderson of Anderson Farms and Cosmetics.
Richard Anderson is from...
Richard Dean Anderson is from Stargate.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was Matrix, but go on.
Yeah, but no, that's just Mr. Anderson. I don't think they were given a name in the Matrix.
Did not?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, basically they make a big point about one of the villains' surnames being Anderson, and they also say that the girl he kidnapped, surname was Anderson. And not that they obviously have to be related, but like when you're making up people and you mention both names very specifically, you wouldn't give them the same surname.
It's odd.
It's an odd thing of verisimilitude that kind of you and I were expecting for it to turn out that she was like his, I don't know, cousin or something like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing I thought was interesting in this episode was it kind of for the first time in Buffy brings up the issue of class. Xander talks a lot about how these characters have more than him, how they have so many advantages over him in terms of finances and everything like that. And it's absolutely true. And Xander actually does consistently through this show represent the class issue in the sense that he is from a distinctly I was going to say lower class, but I already don't.
Working class
background. Whereas Buffy is probably from lower mid, and Willow probably from upper mid class, but Xander does represent the working class. And yeah, so like while we detest Xander, do we appreciate him as being representative of class issues?
Oh, like that's always been what I've liked the most about Xander, because I think his portrayal of the class issue, and also, to be honest, I feel like the working class thing ameliorates some of his frustrating behaviour, because he does have a lot of insecurity and
a very genuinely difficult home life. It seems.
Because I find like one of the most persistent images I have of Xander and of the show is definitely from restless in his dream state, when his father is like harassing him from the top of the stairs. We never see his face, he's just backlit, like that's quite strong, and I think that's quite underneath a lot of what Xander is, loud personality and loud shirks, but no, I think that's like one of the more interesting parts about it. And it is quite tragic as things go on, that his friends kind of develop and grow, and he doesn't. And it's really only towards the end of the show that he manages to find things he is good at in a genuine way.
Season 5 onwards, I think, is when he starts. He buys the nice apartment or house actually, and all that stuff. Yeah, and
he's like good at construction, all this kind of stuff, and he finds like an identity there. It's the really interesting part of his character, I think. But yeah, and it really calls into question. Like there really is only. Like they mention, they mention Kent Preparatory School, in as where one of the girls is from. So presumably, I think some reasonable distance of where they are. So why is it all these people from these different class backgrounds are going to Sunnydale High? Why is Cordelia in the same school that Xander is in? That's
a good question, and I think it's a uniquely American phenomenon, which is that high schools are huge, and it is the norm. Sending your kid to a prep school is unusual, deeply unusual. Like sending them to the local high school is absolutely the norm in a way that it's not the norm in England or Ireland. Because in Ireland, there's definitely public versus private school is an active and ongoing issue in Ireland, in the sense that there are a huge amount of private schools that, anyway.
I think also in Ireland it's kind of a weird comparison because catchment areas are smaller, the country's smaller.
Yeah.
You know, it more naturally falls out that for most schools people come from nearby, and areas tend to have a similar socioeconomic background and things like that for the most part.
Sure.
Whereas I think you're right, it's not difference here is that in the American high schools there's like wildly different backgrounds in the same.
Yeah. With talking about Xander, was that problematic when he was dressed up by the frat boys in a bra and in a wig and made to dance for them?
You know, I actually was thinking about this, and I feel really good about saying no, it wasn't. It also wasn't interesting.
No, it wasn't interesting.
But I did, and actually, that this is. One of the truisms I return to is it's really nice to watch a film sometimes and be like, I didn't like that. Because then you feel reassured that your opinions you have about other things is like, oh, I'm not just going for the easiest common denominator. When I like something, I do like it, and seeing something that's bad or having a meal that's bad, etc., reminds you that you can be discerning with your taste.
That's actually my least favorite argument for the problem of evil, which is a genuine problem that exists in philosophy of religion, which is that why does evil exist if God is all-knowing and all-powerful and good? And one of the arguments for it is that you need to have evil to be able to recognize good things. Yeah. And I was thinking, well, no, if God's all powerful, he can just change the logic rules so that you can experience good without experiencing evil.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like logic and causality and that are functions of the universe and God's outside the universe, so it doesn't make any sense. But it does work in terms of films, meals, and Xander's bra. Yeah,
it does.
So with Xander, you would think Xander dressing up in women's clothes and being made to dance in a fraternity, we would have to jump on that because that's what this podcast is about. It's neither problematic because that is just a thing that people do in fraternities and it's stupid.
Yeah.
But the show isn't drawing any attention to it other than like they had other pledges walking around in like French maids uniforms. It doesn't draw the gaze to it. It doesn't get any actual laughs from it.
Is that E or?
One way or the other, yeah.
Yeah.
You actually feel a little bit sorry for Xander, to be honest, more than anything else.
Yeah.
But it also has no potency. Because I feel like there's a bag Buffy essay that would talk about how this ties into the fact that Xander was potentially coded gay at this time and all this kind of stuff. And it's just not that. It's completely neutral. It's like a room temperature glass of milk, thematically speaking. And I'm so comfortable with that.
The two things I'll talk about there is one, it really does speak to this attempt by Xander to fit into a social situation in which he cannot parse and he cannot pass in. Because he tries to dress up in the nice clothes. He puts on a red polo shirt and a nice pair of pants. He looks decent for the first time in the whole show. He tries to code switch, essentially, into this more affluent background, and he doesn't pass, essentially, which is kind of sad. And the other thing is that he does, when Willow says, "Are you wearing makeup?" and he says, "No," and then just wipes his lips. Which is the tiniest bit of being the fear of the feminine, which I think is a normal thing portrayed in girls, and they don't actually play it off too much. He doesn't show too much of a disgust with himself because of it.
The interesting thing is, I definitely see where you're coming from there, and I felt that same reflexive thing as well. But I don't know if that's us being biased here, because I think it might also just be the embarrassment that he'd make a dress up in like clownishly women's clothes. It wasn't even like it was like an enormous bra.
So what you're postulating is if Xander was put in good drag, he would be comfortable with it.
No, but I'm just saying it was particularly like it was a comically large bra. And it was a dry, thirsty wig. I think it might just be the embarrassment of the situation rather than any kind of like embarrassment of wearing makeup, to some degree, maybe overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
And also, like, you have to feel sorry for Xander's situation, because when he was there dancing for them for a protracted period of time, and as a more emotionally mature person now in my late 20s, I'm like, well, you not just leave.
Yeah.
Well, you not just stop doing this, But then you do feel that thing of like when you're 16 where you're like, you can't make
16 and a half,
as he says, we can't make decisions.
Yeah.
But then when he comes back later and
he starts punching people, be like, this is for this, this is for this.
This is for what my dad said. It's just like, it's so, I don't know, it's just so uncomfortable.
It's not good.
But for once, I'm not angry at Xander for it. I'm kind of
No, it is. I mean, like, it's the way into his character is to show him the sympathetic light on the basis of him having that more difficult background than some of the other characters in terms of his socioeconomic standings.
Yeah, and one of the jokes that Cordy makes to him is, I'm sure you have loads of opportunities to go to college, Xander. People always need pizzas delivered. And knowing that Xander doesn't get to college and does end up in these menial jobs.
It hurts,
really, like, Does Willow finishes college? Does she?
No, I don't think so. It's hard to say.
Do any of them finish college?
No. So if you think about it, they start college in season 4.
Yeah.
By the end of season 6, which would be the end of her 3rd year in college, which she's not portrayed as attending because she's started abusing drugs and goes off the rails because her girlfriend gets killed. So unless there's a scene in season 7 in which she does go back to college, it doesn't seem like she does go back to college.
Well, I have to keep an eye on that because that's interesting because it's such like they actually portray quite like blended situations or quite like non-traditional approaches to how you get through your 20s, because Buffy obviously has to leave college because her mother dies and because she has to take care of her sister, and she eventually finds her job as a guidance counselor, and interestingly, in season 1, I think it was, there was she did a personality test about what kind of job she could have, and they recommend she should be a police officer. And eventually, in the comics, towards the end, she'll actually become a police officer.
Oh, does she? That's nice.
After all the Slayer stuff is pretty finished, she's like, she was always more suited to be a community person rather than an academic person. Willow, as you said, doesn't manage to finish. Cordelia goes off and starts a new life in LA, and Xander. So none of them have this kind of traditional get out of the town by being smart and going to college and all that kind of stuff. Which is interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, I have one last point before we move on to our closing stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the things I read in Why Buffy Matters, which is by Rhonda Wilcox, which is actually quite a good book. I disagree with almost every conclusion she comes to, but it's well researched and well written. She specifically highlights the line in this episode that Willow shouts when they're saving Buffy, which is, "Guys, Buffy, Snake, basement now," which is a great line. So she identifies it as a compact example of a pattern common in Buffy. Smaller elements represent larger ones, a kind of semiotic synecdoche, using both sound and picture. Synecdoche is a situation in which a part represents the whole or the whole represents the part. So yeah, guys, Buffy, Snake, basement, now. That represents the entirety of the episode of the structure.
Yeah.
It is fractal. She also highlights, so here, I'll actually just read this here. In Reptile Boy, there's a very Freudian fraternity which worships a phallic demon, acknowledged as such by the writers, and uses women to get ahead in the world. The frat boys seem admirable on the surface, while engaging in wickedness in the basement of the subconscious, where the demon snake appears. Buffy allows herself to be ensnared by them. After a struggle, woman breaking free of her chains, quite literally, releases herself with the gladly accepted help of not only her female friend Willow, but also the outsider males Xander, Jaws, and Angel. The whole plot and symbolic subtext is neatly summarized in Willow's telegraphic command: "Guys, Buffy, Snake, basement now." Actually, yeah, I think
pretty solid.
It is. It's really solid.
The basement, is that Freud or Jung?
Freud.
Okay.
Deeply Freudian.
My psychology is a bit rusty, but it is something which I do reach to, and so basically it's that at the higher parts of your personality, the more refined,
the ego and superego.
The ego and superego are the part of your house that receives visitors and it's fancy and all that kind of stuff. And as you go down the floors, it's more bare into the the servant quarters and all that kind of stuff. And then the basis part of your brain, where the id is and where the real animal instincts are, is a cave basically with chains and bones, and the most ancient part of the human personality is there. And I think it's
the id, yeah.
The id.
It's consistently represented in Buffy. The basement is the id in Buffy, consistently.
But specifically, actually, what we would also refer to that as, because it's the oldest part of your brain and the oldest part of the evolutionary brain. The reptile brain.
I see
is the basement.
That's cute.
And I did read something about this episode where they say that they do consistently portray relationships in terms of real base animal instincts, like the fear, the anger that Angel has when he reacts, the territorialness, similar to things like, it's also something that comes up in Inca Mummy Girl, in the pack, all this kind of stuff. It's always a reduction to this base that is in itself, these base emotions are not reductive or simplistic, but they are synecdoche of the actual situation. There's nothing more complex about Angel's and Buffy's relationship than the emotions they have when he's trying to protect her. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing lost there in terms of information.
Yeah.
When he goes into the house, that is the whole of their relationship at this moment. So it's kind of recursive in that way.
That's a really good point.
Thank you.
Okay, Joel, do you have any fashion notes? My fashion notes are Xander's wearing an incredibly lime green shirt, which he has buttoned with one button in the very middle. It's evil. It's awful. I hate it.
Xander needs to get queer-eyed.
He does.
Someone needs to tell him what his sizes are.
Yep.
So Cordelia goes to the party wearing a kind of a very kind of Japanese-inspired dress.
Like very kimono-y. Kimono, she better don't.
Kimono, she better don't. Buffy's dress is nice, but it kind of looks a bit like a night dress.
It does,
It's a bit too
too stringy.
too stringy.
And she also wears black after Cordelia tells her not to.
Yeah, that's just her being a bitch.
Yeah.
I do appreciate consistently, like Angel's just decided, I have this way I look and it works. And I have a closet full of these black jackets and white shirts, you know.
At one point during the episode, Buffy is wearing giraffe print flare pants. And I was like, wow.
Willow wear the candy necklace at one point.
Willow was great in this episode.
She was, and I think particularly with the next episode we're going into, where she's more center stage.
Yeah,
I think this is gearing her up.
Halloween is a Willow episode. I never thought about it before. Yeah.
But she was great, and even like when she was like staring at Angel when they're having a serious, Giles and Angel having a serious occult conversation, and Willow's like, Angel, you have no reflection. How do you shave?
Yeah.
It was me. That was me in that moment. That's what I would say. Yeah, I really emoted with that. And I think just generally the frat boys, like, I don't know if this was fashionable, but just kind of wearing a sports coat over a t-shirt. Ugh. Even the robes they wear look so tacky. Like, they look like costume robes, but like Halloween costume robes.
Yeah, you're right.
Brown, monkish robes. Not great.
No, not good at all. Death count. Do we have any deaths? We don't have any deaths directly in this episode except for the Reptile Boy.
No, it's implied that there are dozens of... Well, actually, they do mention 2 girls who went missing last year specifically.
Yeah, 96, sure.
And dozens of girls over the last 50 years, but the only actual direct murder in the episode is Makia when he's chopped in half by Buffy.
Okay, do we count that?
Yeah, that's great. Some of the dice, yeah.
Cool. Do you have any other Buffy bits? Oh, I have a Buffy bit for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first use of the term patrolling.
Really?
Yeah, which is obviously a consistent thing that they do. And they really do establish her as being someone who needs to patrol the graveyard not like nightly from this point onwards. So it's appropriate that this starts to enter the Buffy lexicon at this point.
Yeah, and she starts to kind of take more of a commitment in terms of her actual job and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. There's lots of like themes of movement towards adulthood in this episode and accepting your responsibility and etc. etc. So yep, they previously had used hunting. Which is a bit
which
was
more,
not good.
Yeah. Not all the Buffy Boys bits from me, Brian.
That's everything?
Yeah.
Grand. Do you want to do a rating?
Yeah, sure. Have one in my brain. Okay.
I'm going to go... Who went first last time?
I think it was me, but it was because you say that you always go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm going to go 6.0 boardroom suicides out of 10.
Ooh, very good. I am going to go 4.9. 4.9 penises.
Oh my god. Wow. That's direct.
Yeah, so it's not... that's my phallic imagery.
4.9.
I didn't think it was good.
No, yeah.
I didn't think it was a good episode.
It's consistently referred to as one of the worst episodes, along with I, Robot Eugene.
There was bits about that I enjoy because I enjoy the characters and I love trash, but it didn't feel like Buffy. Was my takeaway from it.
There were scenes or badly written dialogue, which is odd.
And I think actually that one scene we zoned in on where Angel and Buffy were talking to each other, I think we were both like, this doesn't feel like the characters. No. And that kind of coloured it for me. It's like, people aren't really acting. But you'll never get... I don't think you ever get lower than a 4 for me on a Buffy episode as long as the characters I like are in it.
Beer bad?
I have to rewatch it and see how bad it is.
Beer bad is really bad.
But yeah, 4.9 penises.
Okay, great. Okay. So the next episode we have is Halloween. And to be honest... This season, from this point on, there are 2 bad episodes from my perspective, which are probably Go Fish, which is the swimming team episode, and the other one, Bad Eggs, which is just not great. But the rest of them it's banger after banger.
Yeah, they all slap.
Like, it's Halloween, Lie to Me, Innocent Surprise, Becoming Parts 1 and 2, all such fucking good episodes. I'm so excited.
It's just going to be trending. I also kind of wanted to go low. So I can trend up from here, because it's just all going to be high going forward.
Yeah. I can't wait for Halloween. Yay.
Okay, cool. So that's us for this week. Like, comment, subscribe, stake, patrol, slay. And tell your friends, tell your pastor. And we will see you next week for Halloween. Woo!
Woohoo! Okay, thank you guys. Bye.
Buffy Boys.
Buffy Boys. Boys of Buff. See ya. Oh shit, I wasn't recording.
I was going to make that joke too.